All right, I think we are good to go. Looks like everybody can hear me okay, which is good. Looks like we got people from all over the place. I see a bunch of repeat attendees. I'm seeing folks in California, Idaho. We've got some folks that are staying up late in India, Houston, Florida, Birmingham. Great. Really glad to see everybody. So glad everybody could join. For those of you who haven't been on one of the other sessions, I'm Mark Stoddard at ClientSuccess, and really excited to have Jim Kalbach from MURAL on today. Jim, hey, how's it going?
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Greetings to everyone out there from around the world.
Awesome. We are pumped. Can everybody hear Jim okay? He okay on the audio too? Looks like we're good there. All right, good. So a couple housekeeping things. We've got Dave Blake on, also CEO of ClientSuccess. I'm going to have him share a couple things here at the beginning. Then I'll give a little bit of an intro into ClientSuccess, and then Jim and I will jump into the meat of the conversation. Dave, can you hear us okay?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our next weekly webinar series. We're excited to have Jim with us. I'll share a little bit more about Jim in a minute, but just wanted to thank everybody for joining us. This has been a fun series. We've got a lot of people on here who have been in the past, so thank you for coming back. If this is your first time, we hope you get a lot of knowledge and out of this today and all of these series. And we hope that you'll bring your friends. If you enjoy it, tell your friends to come next time, because this has been a lot of fun for us, and we hope that you get a lot of value as well. A couple quick things that I'll always say is, hey, thank you for everything. We're grateful to be in the trenches of customer success with you. We are mindful of those in our community who have been laid off for one reason or another, and hope that each of us will do our best to try to find somewhere to land for all these individuals. They're great professionals, caught up in a very unfortunate time. And so if you're hiring right now, please let people know and do your best to take care of all the other professionals in this community. You can also go to ClientSuccess website, and we've got a posting there where you can see open jobs. If you're there, MURAL is hiring. Alicia says, hi, Alicia.
Oh yeah, Jim, we got to get you on the site.
Exactly. And you could see job openings on our site across the globe. And you also, if you are hiring, you can also submit a job posting on our site, so we can help our friends in the community. And last but not least, just stay safe. We hope that you and your family are healthy. And if you're impacted any way, our thoughts and prayers go out to you. If the ClientSuccess team can help now or in the future, please reach out. We're always here for you, and grateful for the support that you give us. Really excited to hear from Jim. Mark's going to give you the full introduction, but Jim is a great thought leader and a great friend of our of ClientSuccess. And so grateful, Jim, that you could join us today. And with that, I'll sit back and enjoy the show today. Thanks, Jim.
Cool. Thanks.
My pleasure, Dave. Thanks. Yeah.
Really appreciate it. So just before we jump into the main topic around the Jobs to Be Done playbook, we've got a bunch of new folks to the webinar today. So I want to, especially those who aren't familiar with ClientSuccess, give you a brief intro into who we are, what we do, perhaps how we help, especially companies right now. And then we'll jump into it with Jim. But for those of you that aren't familiar with ClientSuccess, we're a customer success growth platform. And so what that means is we help customer success teams keep and grow their customers. And we focus first on helping CSMs really do everything they need to drive customer success through the entire life cycle, all the way from new to renew. And so what that involves is helping companies to onboard their customers really successfully, drive really deep adoption, drive really good, clear forecasting around renewals and growth. And so we focus on kind of those four key pillars around onboarding, adoption, renewal, and growth. And at the same time, giving really clear insights into the entire company around customer health, around revenue retention forecasts. And so that the entire company is up to date on what's going on. Also give the ability to collaborate on customer health to come to customers' needs when you need to. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more, feel free to find us. We're at ClientSuccess.com. Bunch of companies are reaching out to us right now, especially with the current epidemic, because they're saying we really need a customer success platform to help us drive more consistency, more accountability, more collaboration, because now all of our teams are remote. And so we really need a bunch of extra help to really drive that. And so happy to help. Again, find us ClientSuccess.com. Shoot us a note on Twitter. We're at ClientSuccess. Or if there's anything, like Dave said, anything we can do to help, feel free to let us know. So let's jump into the main topic today. So really excited again to have Jim from MURAL on the call. And today we're going to do a bit of a departure from what we've done in some of the other sessions. If you've been joining these sessions in this series, you'll know that we've done a mix of people that are presenting and talking about kind of today's topic, what's going on in the world right now around the current pandemic, et cetera. And we've had some other folks who aren't necessarily talking about what's going on in the news in the world right now and how that applies to customer success. This fits into that bucket. We're gonna focus on a framework that Jim shares, and I'm gonna let him walk you through it in detail. But this is something that I saw for the first time last year at our CS100 Summit. If you guys are not familiar with our CS100 Summit, go to our website, find it, CS100. It's an incredible summit that we have. I think this will be, well, hopefully if we can continue to have it, our fifth or our sixth year ongoing. And it's a really great opportunity for customer success leaders to get together, share best practices, network, and it's fantastic. But last year we had Jim as one of our presenters, and he presented on this framework. And so as we were going through and getting ready for this series, we thought Jim would be a great one to bring on. So really excited to have Jim, and I'm going to turn it over to you to jump into things. Is that okay?
All right. Yeah, let's do it. I'll start sharing my screen.
Yeah, let me
As
stop
soon
share.
as you stop, there you go.
And while he's pulling that up, one other thing I'll say is, like the other sessions, we want this to be interactive. We want to have a really good Q&A. I've got an extra helper on the Q&A in the chat panel today, Jaron Stevens from my team. And if you have questions that you'd like me to share or me to read off from Jim, put those in the chat pane, put those in the Q&A. I've got them up on my other screen over here, so I'm working over there. Also, if you'd like to be unmuted and chat with Jim directly, also you can just raise your hand and I can do that also. We usually have one or two folks that do that, and then we have a bunch of folks who do the Q&A. So want this to make this as interactive as possible. Jim, you've got a bunch of really good content to share, and so I think we'll have a little bit more Q&A a little bit toward the end, but want everybody to know that. So very good.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mark. I just want to do a quick mic and slide check. You can still hear me, and you got my slides up there, Mark?
I can see you perfect, and I hear you okay. And looks like in the chat pane, anybody, looks like we're good. Yep.
All right. Let me dig into it. Yeah, so thanks for that introduction. My name is Jim Kalbach. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Kalbach. I'm the head of customer success at MURAL. That's a remote digital whiteboard, actually. So right now we're trying to help folks who are suddenly remote. And you can check out some of our content. We got a nice suddenly remote webinar series there as well, too. Okay. I'm also the author of 3 books. My background is actually in product design, design strategy. And today, April 7th, marks the release date of my book on jobs to be done. So happy to be here with you. Yeah, it's today. Congrats. It's today. So Love you can go out to Rosenfeld Media. I'm not here to peddle books though. It was kind of a little bit of a coincidence though. I'll put that in the chat just in case anybody wants to check that out over on Rosenfeld Media. Really and that's what we wanted to talk about today. I do have a lot to say on the topic. Obviously, I wrote a whole book on it. So I'm gonna be moving kind of quickly here, and hopefully leave some time for questions there. Want to just start out by level setting, talking about what jobs to be done is. And I like to start with this quote. maybe an overused quote. Our friend Todd Eby hates this quote because it's overused too much. For some reason I'm using it just to irk him, but is Todd on? He's
just out of spite. Let's just use
just
that.
out of spite, yeah, to Todd. But Theodore Levitt, famous Harvard business professor, used to tell his students, people don't want a quarter-inch drill, they want a quarter-inch hole. And it's not necessarily that specific use case. I'm not focused on drills here. It's the logic behind this statement that I think kind of underlies jobs to be done. Companies are really good at looking at their markets, looking at people through the lens of their own brand, through the lens of their own solution and service, right? And what he's saying is you got to flip that around. What are people trying to get done? And using your product is not what they're trying to get done. That's the means to the end, but what's the end, right? They want a quarter-inch hole, not a quarter-inch drill. So the logic of jobs to be done, and the thing that attracts me to it, is that you have this flipping of a perspective, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go along. So we can ask ourselves, what's the job to be done for this webinar series, right? Why did you hire? In jobs to be done language, we talk about you hire a product, right? You don't buy a product, you hire it to get a job done, right? So you might say something like to learn new things in a professional field or in my professional field, right? Assuming a lot of people wanted to get some new insights here. That's why we kind of connect on these webinars in general. There might be multiple jobs that we could talk about as well too. So part of the jobs to be done framework, you have to kind of sort through what are the potential jobs that any solution might fulfill. In this case, learning new things in my professional field. If we take an easier example, well, what's the job to be done of coffee? What do you think, Mark? What job does coffee?
I think for most people, it's a quicker way to wake up in the morning.
There you go. Yeah, you could say wake up in the morning. It might be a social job here too. Meet on a Sunday afternoon, without having to have dinner, right? That kind of thing. So there might be multiple jobs. But if we just take that first one, wake up in the morning, we could phrase it as get energy in the morning. And jobs to be done gives us a language for looking at a context and trying to formulate a job state. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as well too. But the reason why I say get energy in the morning is because that opens up our thinking a little bit. What else gives us energy in the morning? I could jump into a frozen lake, right? I could do some exercises, or maybe I could have a kale smoothie. They all help me get energy in the morning. And the reason why I mentioned that last example is because there's an author in the field of jobs to be done who wrote a book called When Coffee and Kale Compete. You might say, wait a minute, coffee doesn't compete with kale. There's the whole coffee market, right? And kale juice, that's over there. Kale smoothies, that's over there. But from a person's perspective, both of those things, kale smoothies and coffee, can help me get energy in the morning, right? So jobs to be done, this flipping of thinking, start with the outcome first and then go back and figure out what the solution and your brand, that comes later. It allows us to see things from a different perspective. That's why the subtitle of a lot of my talks and the book itself is a way of seeing, because for me, jobs to be done is a way of seeing people without looking at them through the lens of your own product or your brand. So jobs to be done is really, it's a language, it's a framework that gives us a language for looking at people, what they're trying to get done, that's technology independent and stable over time, because it's not about the solution, right? And if you take the job of listening to music, the solutions have changed over time, but the job hasn't changed, right? So jobs to be done gives us a language to not only talk about the outcomes that people want to have independent of my technology, but that also kind of future-proofs things for you. Because once you understand the job and you frame it in the right way, that's going to be stable and not change. That's not going to be volatile, because listening to music actually hasn't, if you look at the process of listening to music, it hasn't changed that much as the technology changes. So I'm going to make a couple of points throughout the webinar. The first one I want to make is that using your product is not a job to be done. I hear that very often. Oh, the job to be done is to buy my product. No, that's what you want the customer to do. That's not their job. Their job is what they're trying to get done, ultimately get done with or without your product or a competitor or anything else, right? So jobs to be done, it's a lens. It's a way of seeing your business from the outside in, from the customer's perspective. I like to talk about an out-of-body experience. It's a way to kind of remove the baggage and assumptions and bias of your own solution and kind of look back at yourself, at your company from the outside in. You kind of view yourself from the customer perspective. What are they trying to get done? They might hire kale smoothies or they might hire coffee. So Coffee and kale smoothies absolutely compete for getting energy in the morning. If you look at it that way, you're going to think about your customer outcomes and your market, for that matter, in a different way. And that's the kind of insight that Jobs to be Done brings to us. And from a customer success perspective, well, that's really cool, because we're looking at customer success. What makes them successful? You got to understand what their outcomes are, what they want to get done, right? And Jobs to be Done gives us a language for talking about outcomes without talking about outcomes in the context of our products and brands. So I've in the book I break down Jobs to be Done into 5 different elements. And again, if you think about Jobs to be Done as a lens, right? We take signals from the outside. We observe the outside world, the markets, people that we interact with. What Jobs to be Done does is it provides us a filter. We can hear, we can listen to those signals and then put them into different categories. Oh, that's a job performer. That's the person who's performing the job, the who. Oh, that's a job. That's what they're trying to get done. Oh, that has a process as well too. Let me understand the process. And then what are the outcomes that people want? And then there's also circumstances that all of that takes place in. So when we listen to the market, when we listen to our customers, we can sort the information and normalize it into these buckets. And again, like I said, Jobs to be Done is ultimately a language. It's a way for understanding the things that people are trying to get done. I'm proposing this kind of 5 different level or element categorization. And I wanted to touch on a couple of these: the jobs, the process, and the outcomes as well too. But I'll be showing this slide. So let's just look at the job. When we talk about the job. Oh, one thing before I proceed, notice that what people are trying to get done is different than why they're trying to do it, or the outcome. So Jobs to be Done is very careful and specific by separating out the what, the process, and the outcomes. Those things are handled separately, and the language doesn't mix those things up, or it doesn't have to mix those things up. I'll talk about that in a second. So I give a lot of workshops and obviously writing on Jobs to be Done, and I give some rules on how to formulate a job statement. When you're working with this, it's a language, it's a way to describe your markets, and usually doing it in writing. So there's no reference to technology solution methods. If you write a job statement that has any of that, I will come around and hit your knuckles with a ruler, which I like to do in my workshops. It doesn't include the outcomes. This is what I was talking about. It separates those things. So right, you want to listen to music, but you don't want to listen to good music or cheap music. Those are the outcomes, good and cheap. And it separates those out. So you say, listen to music over here, and then you could say the outcome is I want that to be good. So you separate things in Jobs to be Done language. And you also make it as modular as possible, so you don't have a lot of ands or ors. If you have a job statement with an and or an or in it, I whack you on the knuckles with a ruler. So they all job statements start with a verb. It's the user's perspective, by the way. It's not your job. When you're talking about a job, it's what they're trying to get done, which again isn't log in and use your product. And it's not your job on what the features that you have to provide to them. It's from their perspective, what they're trying to get done. Get energy in the morning, listen to music, run a marketing campaign. Those are jobs to be done, not your own jobs internally for your product teams or your project teams. And you want to focus on the objective, not the task. Sometimes there's a confusion between a job and a task. A job isn't necessarily a task. For me, is a little bit lower level. It's just, it's an action that you do once. A job is really a process. I'm going to talk about process coming up as well too. And you can indicate context if needed as well too. Let me just look at a couple examples there. So an incorrect job statement would be search by keyword for documents in a database. Right? That's what people do with an online search tool or search database, right? But there's a ton of technology in there. Keyword search is a method, document is a technology, database is a technology, right? So in the Jobs to be Done language, we would correct that to say retrieve content online, right? Notice that qualifier online as well too. And if you say, hey, one of the test questions for a good job statement is, what did they do 50 years ago? Right? And guess what? They had online systems 50 years ago and retrieve content online. And 50 years from now, we could still say retrieve content online. We might not be using keyword. We might be using brainwaves. And people say, keyword? Why would I put a keyword in there? I can just use my brainwave, but the job is still the same. It's retrieve content online. Find the cheapest airfares, looking at the next one. Get cheapest and quickly. Those are the outcomes that people want. So the job is find airfares. The outcomes are twofold. One is maximize my chance of getting the cheapest airfare and increase the speed at which I can find the airfare, right? So those are two different outcomes, cheap and quick, and the job is separate from there. So again, jobs to be done is a very careful language to kind of sort and separate these signals from the outside world, put things in categories. By doing that, that gives us the ability to build models, to normalize things, to do surveys, to operationalize this job's thinking there as well too. So the last one, I need to research and plan a vacation for the whole family will enjoy. There's a bunch of things in there. It doesn't start with a verb. There's an and in there as well too. Job would be plan a family vacation. So I just wanted to kind of give some of those examples to kind of set the stage at how careful the language of jobs to be done can be. Sometimes it feels artificial, I'll admit that as well too. But once you get, so it takes some practice to work with jobs language. But each of those jobs we can look at as a process as well too. So any job that you define, you can also break it down into a sequence, a chronological sequence of steps. So to illustrate the difference here, particularly between things that we do in our current practices probably, just kind of type it, this is audience participation time. So why'd the chicken cross the road? Anybody know? Type it in the chat. It sounds like an innocent question.
We got to get the other side because he was
to get
stupid.
the other side. Yeah,
I got to get the other side.
Dave, Mark, I mean, the very first time I did this, I was actually in Germany, and that's not a joke in Germany. So that's why I always ask, because I don't want to assume.
Good point.
And I saw some people from outside of the country, and they don't know the answer to this question. So this is a joke.
To eat.
To eat.
He's an Estonian now, so I'm not sure if that's a joke there or not. Who knows?
Yeah, but Frank says the life is greener. That's actually interesting because I'll bring that up in a second. But why did the chicken cross the road? The answer is to get to the other side, right? So in the context of jobs to be done, we can say the chicken's job is to get to the other side of the road, right? Why he wants to do that, or she, those are the outcomes, right? Because life is greener, there's more food over there, increase my chance of getting more food, all kinds of other things, stay dry, whatever those outcomes might be. But the job is a simple statement to get to the other side. So to contrast jobs to be done with other things that we do, on the customer success and customer experience, we just want to look at a customer journey map. So let's imagine for a second, Mark, that we work for the Acme Road Crosser. And this is an app that helps chickens cross the road, right? So I could create a persona for Chucky the chicken. So we got my persona of my chicken up there. And now I want to see how my chicken acquires my app and uses it, right? So we could look at, they discover it, they see the ad on Facebook, then they compare products. Chicken subscribes to the app, watches the video, then uses the app to cross the road, and they recommend it to their friends, right? And there's an emotional curve that comes with it. Pre-sales, post-sales, land and expand, motion, right? This is a customer journey map. This is not a job map. This is not the job to be done. This is actually a customer journey map is very selfish to some degree, because this is what we want the chicken to do. We want them to use our app. And this is really a story. The story here, this is go-to-market story. This is our go-to-market narrative, right? It's not about the chicken job. In fact, there's almost nothing in here about crossing the road, you'll notice, right? It just says the chicken uses the app to cross the road. That's it. We don't understand crossing the road from this view of the world, right? So I like to compare customer journey maps to what I'm going to show next, which is a job map, in that this is a perspective of us looking at the chicken through the lens of our own product and brand and making a ton of assumptions, and there's bias built in here, and ego as well too. Chicken can't cross the road without our app. Well, actually, chicken can cross the road with that app. It's not about your product. So let's compare that to a job map. In the jobs to be done canon, there's this artifact called the job map. So we identify who's crossing the road, in this case, the job performer. We understand the main job. And I wrote cross a thoroughfare because you might argue, well, road is actually, that's only a type of a condition or a type of a solution, because it might be cross a bike path or cross a ski slope or something like that. So just cross a thoroughfare. I genericized it to make it even more future-proof. And then we can look at the steps in doing that, right? So the chicken decides to cross, they determine which thoroughfare to cross, select a point, determine when to cross, assess traffic, wait for the absence of traffic, confirm the absence of traffic, cross the thoroughfare, observe changes in traffic, adjust speed, and then they reach the other side, right? So this is a story about crossing the road. If we answer the question, why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side, a customer journey map doesn't tell me about getting back here to the customer journey map, this doesn't tell me how to get to the other side. This tells me how it got my app, right? So there's a perspective here that jobs to be done then kind of flips around, right? It's not about the quarter-inch drill, it's about the quarter-inch hole. Let's understand the quarter-inch hole, or in this case, let's understand crossing the road, and then in a second step, we can layer our brand and our product back on there. And we can ask ourselves questions about this job. So, and that's what we did in a recent exercise at the end of last year at MURAL, where we were looking at, in this case, conducting a working session with a client. We were looking at how consultants engage with their clients, right? So we didn't say, hey, how do you use MURAL? You know, how do they acquire MURAL and train MURAL and then, you know, share MURAL with their client? We wanted to know how does a consultant engage with their client, right? So they plan the engagement, they set it up, they prepare, they initiate, they collaborate, find patterns, conclude, and they consolidate all of that, and then they end that session or end the engagement, right? This is not the story of our brand or go to market for MURAL. This is the story of conducting a working session with a client using the jobs to be done language. And you'll notice in all of, and then there's sub-steps under there, and you'll notice all of these are phrased. They begin with a verb. There's no technology in there. So we don't even say like document at the end, or, you know, send an email. It says share content with others. It says package outcomes, or under the setup phase, it says build materials for session. It doesn't say create PowerPoint slide, right? So we've expunged all of that language. And if you ask yourself 50 years ago, how did a consultant work with his client? It would probably be something like this. They didn't do Zoom, they didn't do PowerPoint, they might have used a flip chart, right? If you watch Mad Men, they came in, every Mad Men episode, they would come in with a flip chart, right? But it went through these steps, right? So we're trying to look at the job and trying to get to the core of the job, and then we layer our own solution on top of it. We layer our own brand in relation to this. And that's what we did actually in a workshop. So what we did is we had a team of 4 people, and we went through each of these phases, and we asked ourselves, how well do we support the consultant in this case, interacting with their client with our solution? Right? How well are we supporting them in getting their job done? Not how do they find us and buy our product and stay loyal and recommend us. This isn't about recommending us. This is about us fulfilling on their success. And we gave ourselves school grades. And then what we saw was there was a pattern that we did well up front and then in the middle, but we had these 2 weak spots where we, as a team, we felt we were weaker in supporting consultants with our solution. That then set off discussions. Well, what can we do about it? And part of the answer there was we can do more education. We could do more typical customer success outreach, campaigns, webinars, the content, the videos that we were going to create were going to be how our solution, but also in a more general sense, how can we help people in those areas where we're weaker? So this allowed us to listen to the market. And by the way, this was all based on research. So we went out and we talked to 6, I think, or 8 consultants, and we asked them how they work with their clients. And then we distilled this map from it. So we were listening to what people were trying to get done. And then in a second step, looking at how well we support them, right? And then this gives us now a much broader and a universal picture at the actual job, right? A hole in the wall, or a chicken crossing the road, or in this case, a consultant working with his client, not looking at my brand. And by breaking things down and kind of stripping all of that loaded language out of it, other teams can use jobs language as well too. So our head of product has a similar job map to the one I just showed you, and he uses that to look at his quarterly planning and what areas of the product they're going to be updating as well too. Right? So jobs to be done it's not a design method. It's not a customer success tool. It's not a product tool. It's a universal way to look at people and markets. Did you have a question there, Mark? Or?
Yeah, Jim, if you go back one slide to this one with the grades on it.
Yeah.
So one of the questions is coming through. Unpack a little bit more the grades down below. Is that different people's view? What
Yeah, it was based on assumption. There is a way to do this a little bit more rigorously, where you would actually be asking your market, how well do we perform at each one of these stages. And the way to do that is to actually take all these purple sticky notes and put them into a survey. And you can ask people, how well does our solution get these things done for you? And you can even do that with competitors as well too. And by the way, those competitors don't have to be in your category, right? So I can compare coffee, kale smoothies, and jumping in a lake, and say which one of, at each one of these steps, if we were saying get energy in the morning, this isn't a map of get energy in the morning, but if we were, we could look at how well those solutions actually do that. So by removing, again, you know, by using this careful language, you're able to make comparisons that you wouldn't have been able to make before, because you're not looking at feature to feature inside of your category. But so you could ask the market, we short-circuited that, and admittedly, we're making a lot of assumptions. But when we did it as a team, what it led to were some very, very interesting discussions about where we believe our problems are and how do we know that those are problems. So again, we identified as a team, shooting from the hip, a lot of assumption based in there, but it was really the conversation that this map allowed us to have as a team.
Cool.
And,
Gotcha.
and by the way, that team was a multifunctional team. Right. So once you have this kind of universal bare bones job map, you can bring anybody in and have a conversation here. Marketing, sales, business strategy, mergers and acquisitions, customer support. Everybody can talk about this, right, at the same level. And it's really those conversations. So my goal here wasn't to scientifically pinpoint where our customers have the big pain point. My goal was to have a conversation with the team. And this allowed us to do that. So my next point is that JobSpeed offers a common language for understanding customer success across teams and across departmental lines. It's not a customer success framework. It's not a design framework. It's this universal language. It's a way that an organization can look at the feedback coming in from its market and represent it in a way that's normalized and, you know, stripped of all of that bias that I was talking about as well too, which then gives you, you know, lots of flexibility. Want to talk about some specific techniques that customer success people, customer success managers and specialists can grab onto. And at the same time, I want to look at outcomes. So we talked about the job, a little bit about the process. I want to talk about outcomes. There's a technique, Tony Olwick in particular, there's a name down there. He's got a very rigorous and well proven out method called outcome-driven innovation. And from that, I'm touching on a desired outcome statement here. Again, it's a language. You know, I like to think about JobSpeed as a language. It's a way of expressing observations that we make about our people and our markets. And this has a very regular format where it starts with a verb that shows a direction, right? So if I have a desired outcome, I want to change something, and I want to either increase or raise something, or I want to lower something. So each of these desired outcome statements always starts with the word like minimize or reduce or increase or raise if you want to increase it. And then there's a unit, the thing that I want to affect, and then there's some contextual qualifier as well too. So the desired outcome statement, it's a little Mad Lib-like where you can put in a blank, you know, which direction, what's the unit, and what's the context of doing that. But let's say you want to minimize the time it takes to transcribe workshop content. This is something that we hear from our customers at MURAL, because of course we're all digital, so you don't have to type up sticky notes, right? So that's an outcome. That's an outcome of a job, and you can normalize it here. And one way that we've been using this is to listen to customer pain points or barriers. That we can even call them goals, depending on how they're formed. And what we're trying to do in our success planning calls is to capture desired outcome statements using that schema, using that language. So for instance, if a customer says, a customer of MURAL, I'm using MURAL as an example here, you know, our remote teams aren't on the same page and don't know what's going on their projects. An outcome statement that I would listen into that, if I listened into that, I could rewrite that as, we want to increase the transparency of project status across remote teams, right? And you can confirm that with the customer as well too. But by doing that, by normalizing that and always using the same format in which we're writing our customer outcome statements, then we can start comparing them across customers as well too. And then what we're adding on there is a measurement. So as measured by. So we're really listening for pain points, using the jobs language to come up with a desired outcome statement, and then thinking about what the specific measure of that is going to be. But it's that middle column. Again, once you have these kind of normalized, what you start seeing are same things across customers. You can start clustering and really looking at your impact then ultimately, because you have these normalized outcome statements. So that's just one way of leveraging kind of a jobs way of thinking in customer success to come up with an outcome statement during a success planning engagement at the beginning of a relationship, for instance. Another technique that Alan Clement talks about is onboarding types. He has this typology where you look at experience with your specific solution on the green line from left to right, right? So people who are new to your solution versus people who are experienced with your solution, but then intersecting that with how well do they know the job as well too. And I don't know, Mark, at ClientSuccess, you probably get a lot of people who are not only new to your solution, but also new to customer success.
Yeah, very much
right?
so.
But you also have customer success professionals as well too.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Should they get the same onboarding?
That's a good point.
And what he's suggesting here is we can come up with a typology. And then if you look at that, then the goal of the onboarding experience, so if you have high job comprehension and high product or solution comprehension, then you might want to focus on the deeper aspects of getting the job done. What's the next thing, right? But if you look at people, below that, so they have low job comprehension and high product experience, that's actually going to be a limited use case. I'm going to go to the upper left, right? So they have a high job comprehension. So these are customer success professionals, in your case, Mark, who are new to your product, right? They're gonna know a lot about customer success. They're gonna want to know how your tool specifically addresses their job, right? And then in the lower left-hand corner, you're going to have to walk people through customer success as well too. Does your solution give people that experience as well too? So this would apply. I could do this for MURAL. I could do this for coffee drinking as well too, right? So this is a typology of onboarding types that Alan Clement in his article "Designed for Switching" is the name of that article down there. And then what he recommends is a quick survey just to ask people that. How well do you know the tool? How well do you know your job? In a 2 or 3, 4 question survey. And then what you can do is type them and give them a different onboarding experience, whether that's automated or not.
And I suspect you'd have very different. So for instance, if somebody is in the lower left-hand quadrant,
yeah,
or maybe let's say if they're they have low experience, and low job comprehension, would you typically say, I try to bring them up on job comprehension first and try to go vertical and then across, or
that's a really
left
good
to right then up? Like, how do you typically think about that?
That's a great question, actually. And we see that a lot at MURAL, because MURAL is kind of a new category, right? A virtual whiteboard.
Sure.
And then, things like remote design thinking or remote workshops are also new to people. So we do have a lot of people in that lower corner, or at least they're less mature on on the job dimension, let's say. What I actually like to do is to not separate them and to do both at the same time. So the way you get the job done is with the solution, and to not separate those learning curves. But and in doing that, you don't even have to talk about your solution that much, because you're just focused on getting the job done. And oops, by the way, my solution does it.
It just so happens here how we do it.
It just so happens, and if that's the way they learn it, then that becomes your solution becomes synonymous for them with getting the job done.
Good point.
Yeah, because we do. It's interesting you say that, because every once in a while I hear people say, "Yeah, we're not ready for that. We first have to get better on the job level," or the other way around. I'm like, no, that's your opportunity to use that platform to drive each other. So you can learn your job through our tool can make learning your job better. And same with client success. I could, if I were new to customer success, your tool would help me understand customer success.
Yep.
So why learn them separately? That's how you do customer success, right?
Yep, exactly. Okay, cool.
Cool. Another example from our help center. This is slightly outdated, but we still have this content up there. I was actually thinking about how are we going to structure our help articles a while back when I stood up our help center here at MURAL, and I wanted to apply a jobs thinking. So the way that our help article items are labeled follows a schema that they all start with a verb. So this is a job here. You might call me out and say, hey, you used the word spreadsheet. That's a technology. And I would say, yes, I violated my own rule there because I wanted that for SEO. I wanted that there. So this should say paste from other documents or something like that to be correct. So I broke that rule. But then the first thing we have is this bolded statement. What's the outcome? So Mural's got this feature where you can paste from spreadsheets and lists, and then each cell comes out as a sticky note. It's a really cool feature. But the outcome is you want to increase the ease of working with content across documents. That's what you want to do. And then what are the circumstances? That was the one topic I didn't talk about. The circumstances in which you would use this. What's the process? What are the steps? And then I even have, I talk about emotional jobs and social jobs. I didn't mention that in my introduction, but there are different flavors of jobs as well too. And then we have an image. Not every article follows this schema, but it's a framework that the people who create these articles can rely on for not only consistency, but also we believe that we're talking to the market in a way that they want to hear this. Oh, this is what I'm trying to get done. How do I do it? Why would I do this? And things like that. I have no empirical evidence or even non-empirical evidence that this is a better way to make a help article, right? So I can't say this is better or worse than our other help articles or other ways of doing it, but it's a way that it gives us confidence that we believe we're talking to the market on a level that it wants to hear. I'm just going to move on and wrap up here, and then we'll take some questions, Mark. Okay. So a couple of principles. Then I kind of mentioned some of these there. Just to kind of wrap up at a higher level here. People want to get their job done, not interact with you. It's not about your brand. It's about getting the job done. And guess what? If I have to switch from coffee to kale smoothies, I may do that. Right. So focus on the job first. That focus on the whole, not the drill bit. Mindset. It's really about a mindset. Jobs are stable over time, even as technology changes. And people seek services to get more of their job done quicker and easier. And that's what the exercise that we did with our job map and when we graded the grading that we did, we were trying to get more of the customer's job done with our solution, even if that's through customer success actions. And by making the job the unit of analysis, we're focusing customer success on outcomes. We're starting with what customers want to get done, and then we're working back to our own solution, not the other way around, right? And jobs to be done is not limited to any one discipline. So if anybody in your organization is doing jobs to be done work, you can potentially leverage that across fields. And it's really this kind of universal language that people can be talking about their markets in a different way. So jobs to be done is a broad field. It has many techniques. I just went over a couple, and I tried to pick out ones that are most relevant to customer success. But when applied properly, it's really about customer success. Ultimately, if you think about jobs to be done, is we want to understand the metrics, or in other words, the outcomes that people want to have. We want to understand that before we start building a product, before we start serving them, right? We want to understand what success is, so that we can be proactive there. So jobs to be done in customer success, marriage made in heaven, I think, Mark.
Awesome.
So thanks so much for that. I put these slides up here. If you go to bit.ly/JTBD-ClientSuccess, you can get these slides up there.
Cool. And I'll send them out afterwards in the follow-up mail. So
great. I think I put the PDF over there.
Perfect. So, I mean, and that was fantastic. Really appreciate you going through that, Jim. Got a few questions here that we can start with. I guess the first question I'll start with is, well, let's say you're talking directly to a CSM or a CSM manager. What would be the first step you'd advise them to take? Would it be, call up their customers and ask them, why they bought you or why they stick around with you? Or like, what's that first kind of initial step that you'd recommend somebody do if they want to start thinking about this playbook in their business?
Yeah, that would be a first action that I think I might recommend that people do. But I would actually just start with the mindset. And just start asking yourself, but what's the job that people are trying to get done? Logging into your tool, doing a keyword search, finding the results page, exporting content. That's not a job. That's not the job that people are trying to get done. You just described your tool usage, right? So, just one thought exercise is reframe everything that your tool does in terms of capabilities as a job. What's the thing that supports? So it's really a way to thinking, and even the customer support team at MURAL, which reports into me, I try to get them to think about that as well too. So when people say, "Hey, I can't get the export," is, well, what are you trying to do? Is, well, I need to share this thing in a session. Well, you could say, well, did you know you could project it as well too in it, or send a view only link. right? So there's other ways to get that job done with Mural without having that export, to try to dig. And, you know, when you're moving quickly, sometimes that's hard to do. So my first recommendation would be to try to understand jobs to be done in the mindset that it gives you. But in terms of uncovering a job or creating a job map, like I just said, yeah, it is based on research, and it is qualitative research. So it would be, hey, you know, grab a couple of customers and ask them what they're trying to get done. The first thing you need to do is define your core job in a way that makes sense. So get energy in the morning,
Sure.
listen to music, plan long-term financial well-being. I was working with a wealth manager, and that's the main job that we came up with. His customers want to plan their long-term financial well-being, and that doesn't matter whether it's with real estate or inheritance or just saving money or investing in the stock markets, right? The way that you do that is the same, right? But that's what his customers are trying to do. So you need to, the first thing you need to do is understand and formulate the main job, but then you can break that down into a process. And understanding that process is investigative research. And one thing that you have to do is you got to keep yourself out of it. Because people will start saying, yeah, and then I log in and, oh yeah, and Mark, what's coming up on the product roadmap? He's like, nope, stop. What are you trying to do? And once you get a starting point, you can always then ask the question, okay, what do you do after that? What do you do after that? What do you do after that? Because every job we can see as a process. So what you want to uncover is, what's that underlying process that's independent of my technology and stable over time. I talk about it in the book, some interview techniques. So it's in fact, it's the first play in my playbook is interview, because that's where you find jobs. Jobs don't pop out of surveys. They don't fall off of customer journey maps. You got to go out and find them. And the way that you go out and find them is engaging with people, primarily through interviews.
So interviews definitely better than surveys in your.
You almost can't do it with a survey, because in order to write the question on the survey, you have to make an assumption, or you have to have something that you already know about, right?
Gotcha.
It's got to be interviews, because those conversations are going to go in lots of different directions, and you want to embrace all those different directions. It's not a questionnaire, it's not a survey. You want to have a conversation with people about, if you're a marketing automation solution provider, you want to understand running a marketing campaign. That's a great job statement, or run a marketing campaign, right? You just want to understand that in and of itself to start off. And if you write a survey about it, you're gonna shoebox your answers into too much of an assumption a priori.
Is there a point in time later on, once you've done the interviews and you've gathered initial data, and you maybe want to see how many people kind of fit into this job? Does it come later, or does it not even
that would come later? Yes. To find the jobs, you need to go hunt and do qualitative research. But I kind of mentioned already quickly when I was showing that picture of the job map with the grades underneath it. What you could do is you could take each one of those statements that were in the purple boxes there, and you could put those in a questionnaire and say, how important are these steps to you? How well does our solution fulfill those steps, right? And then launch that to 300 people. And now you have a quantification of, in that job arc that you found out qualitatively, you created a job arc, you can then kind of pinpoint where the hotspots are quantitatively.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Curious what your thoughts are on this next question. So David says, don't new technologies actually create new jobs and change existing ones? Like, So do new technologies actually impact the jobs to be done, or is it the jobs to be done are kind of stay constant? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, when you're working with jobs to be done, you want to try to find the thing that's as constant as possible. And the example I gave is listening to music, and I had cranking a phonograph, right? Listen to music. Technology, whether it's Spotify or an iPod or whatever, hasn't actually changed the way that you listen to music. And think about that. In other cases, it's a little trickier. In other cases, it is a little trickier, I have to admit. Here at Mural, a virtual whiteboard, is it the same as a whiteboard? It's a little bit different than a whiteboard, but it's a little trickier. I used to also work for the folks that go to webinar. Here we are on a webinar using Zoom. It's like, what's the underlying job for a webinar, and did that job change? I would say the context changed, but there are some fundamental underlying jobs that you did, Mark, to get this event.
Sure.
Right. So this is a professional event. So you wanted to run a live professional event. online. So we can add the qualifier of online.
I knew I couldn't do it in person because
right. Anyway, but if we carefully created a job map, it would be very close to running any event, whether it's online or offline.
Sure.
And in fact, when I worked for GoToWebinar, I created a job map that could be online or offline. However, it was very tricky to do. At some point, the technology may influence the job more or less. Listening to music is the reason why I use that as an example is because it works. Sometimes in your field, you might be like, yeah, but my technology or the technology, AR, VR, whatever, my AI changes the way that somebody gets the job done. I think those things happen, but they happen a lot slower than we think they happen.
Got it. Okay, cool. We got time for a couple more questions. So if you have anything else that you want to pop in there, one of the questions that I was thinking through that's come up here a couple times is, what's your advice for getting perhaps like your exec team on board thinking through this? Because we have a bunch of, frontline managers, frontline CSMs who, perhaps, really like this concept and really like this idea, but they probably need to get some buy-in elsewhere in the organization. Where are there resources you point them to, things you'd have them think through? What are your thoughts?
Sure. A couple thoughts there. As I said, I have a human-centered background, human-centered design background, design thinking. And a lot of those disciplines actually overlap with jobs to be done a lot. There's a lot of similar types of thinking there, leaving a lot of designers saying, hey, isn't this what we've done for a very long time? And the answer is, yeah, just in a different package. But that package actually comes from the business world. So one of the kind of origins of modern jobs to be done after Theodore Levitt, the quote that I started off with, is Clayton Christensen, who recently passed away, unfortunately, author of The Innovator's Dilemma, and underlying his theory of business disruption. So disruption in the marketplace, right? One of the most important theories in business, one of the most important books in business too, The Innovator's Dilemma, right? Underlying
one of the most misunderstood concepts.
And misunderstood, yes, absolutely. And in fact, some of my talks on jobs to be done, I talk about The Innovator's Dilemma and disruption in general. But underlying that, according to him, is the job to be done. That companies lose sight of the job to be done, right? And then the incumbent, the newcomer comes in and disrupts the incumbent because the incumbents worry about their own features and not getting the job done. So the thing that I like to point out to execs is actually this is a business theory that underlies one of the most important business theories that's ever been out there. They should pay attention to it anyway, because it can also help. It can also help inform strategy. There's frameworks around deriving company strategy. It can help mergers and acquisitions, all kinds of thinking you can apply jobs to be done to as well too. So it's not just a broad discipline, it also goes up and down the chain. Like I said, my customer support guys using jobs to be done to try to diagnose a support interaction, or the CEO of a company trying to decide what company to buy can use jobs thinking.
Gotcha. Very good. No, this has been awesome. I learned a ton. I'm hoping that everybody else out there learned a ton. Let's pause it there. Any last words that you want to share, Jim?
No, I just hope that everybody out there stays healthy and safe, and that we all do the right thing. And also, I think I saw Alicia, my colleague on here, put out there that we are looking for people over at MURAL. And if you are hiring, I really liked, Mark, that you and Dave came on and put that call out there to help out with a lot of people in their jobs changed or they lost their jobs. So we're trying to do our part on on the MURAL side and help people work at home better, and companies stay efficient and productive in these times. So just wanted to say thanks for having me, and I hope everybody enjoyed this, but I also hope that everybody stays safe and well.
Yeah, same. Agreed 100%. And again, thanks for spending time with us. As you mentioned, we do have the customer success job listings page, which I think Dave put in the chat pane earlier. If you haven't seen it, scroll up, I'll send it out. We got about 30 companies on the list right now that are hiring. And what's been cool to see, because I've been compiling that list, is if I was compiling that list 6 months ago, you'd see that there were a bunch of companies on there that are very strict around location. You have to
Yeah.
be in New York, in San Francisco, in whatever.
Yeah.
I think the overwhelming majority of that list, if you go look at it right now, they say, yeah, we're based in Denver and San Francisco, wherever, but we're also hiring for remote. And
Right.
so that whole idea of remote work, I think, regardless of once we get past this, this crisis, I think we've fundamentally seen a shift in the way companies think about remote work culture. And so I think that's cool to see, and really appreciate Mural for, being there to help with a lot of that transition. So
yeah, and I would recommend, if you go to mural.co, I'll just put it out here. We came very quickly, after this health crisis kind of came about, we put out a couple of webinars. We call them Suddenly Remote, and it's not about Mural. What we wanted to do was share our knowledge, because we've been, we have a team of professionals been working remotely with remote teams and trying to share our best practices to help people work remotely better. So I do recommend our Suddenly Remote webinar series as a place to start if folks want to learn more about that. That's a whole nother topic though, Mark, and I got a lot to say about remote work, so don't get me started.
We'll bring you back for another one.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. Yeah.
Cool. And I'll send out the link to Suddenly Remote in the fall. So,
anytime. Thanks, Mark.
Cool. Well, again, appreciate everyone. Hope everybody stays safe, and again, just really appreciate everybody taking time for us. So
thank
you, and we'll chat soon.
Yep. Thanks.